Hello, everybody. Welcome back to round two. We got a little bit of a late start. We got a king. We have a king on stream versus Whitebeard. King, we're a little bit into the game already, so King did open Onigashima, so I'm actually really excited. Fernando, what do you think is going on here?
Okay, so this player saw that it was the last hurrah weekend for all the red players, and he decided to want to beat all the red players at max power with King, and that is the goal that he has in mind for this weekend. So he decided to bring King to the tournament.
Okay, so he said, this is a winning table, so he actually won round one here.
We could at least assume that's what his mentality was.
Yeah, very much. All right, and we're gonna see standard Whitebeard play of playing Marco. I'm just so excited. I mean, what does King do? I mean, what, you know what I mean? Like, what does it do that's good?
Yeah, so here it's going to be a very typical mid-rangey sort of go into the late game strategy with a couple of bombs, a couple of vanillas. I do believe they play some. All their vanillas are actually quite good in the sense that they draw extra cards or do some powerful effects. So definitely the purple color itself has some nice removal tools and some bombs. So we want to see that from him. Also Onigashima, something incredibly powerful that almost no other color has. So definitely that as well. And he opened it here, and he's not under a lot of pressure from the Whitebeard player. Actually, as a matter of fact, he's put on a couple of 8K swings to the Whitebeard player, and I think his strategy is going to be to exhaust the white player's life and then just attack for a bunch of large numbers in the later portion of the game. So we'll see how quickly he can do that.
All right, yeah. And his ability is when you have Tinned on, your opponent's characters lose 1k power. So it's going to make them a little easier to attack, perhaps. Like the vanillas aren't going to seem so powerful if they're, if they have 1k less power.
We see a defensive option here in the form of Uda 4-drop when this card came out originally in OPO2. And the extra set, it was actually quite the metagame definer, at least for the purple color itself. So we'll see how much work it can do here against Whitebeard.
Yeah, I feel like we didn't really get to see this card shine in set one because it wasn't legal for the Treasure Cups. So we only saw it at locals, right? Basically. And I think there might have been one regional where it was legal. I don't quite remember exactly, but we didn't get to see it shine. So now we're going to see how powerful it really is, So when you rest with it, when you block with it, you can don -1 to rest. It's a 4 cost or less, correct?
Yes, sir. And it's going to be interesting to see if actually this sort of like rush or anti-character card is going to be effective against what Whitebeard is doing, because Whitebeard normally only plays 1 to 2 characters at a time, and definitely stifling this sort of large attackers from the Whitebeard side might be very good. So Uta here might actually prove to be very important in the later portion of the game.
Yeah, also very good at resting a Marco blocker, right? So that would be a great way to just take out Marcos, so you can just go straight to attacking life.
Yeah, and here actually the Whitebeard player is in a little bit of a strange position because he's not close enough to the 9-drop yet and is going down to the 1 life mark by the end of this turn. So actually playing overly defensive here from the side of the purple player, I do like to see, because right now it's just a race against time, putting the Whitebeard player on 1 to 0 life in the next following turn or 2 could be definitive in trying to all-in him a couple of times. So, and then we see here, like you mentioned before, the 4-drop Marco blocker, incredibly important as the Whitebeard player is running out of life. So
yeah, absolutely. And now we're at 10. King's ability is online. This has never been seen before. No, I'm kidding. Right. Very, very rare here. So where King's ability is online, all your opponent's characters have -1 power. So this Marco, this 5-cost Marco only has 5k power, which means it's going to be very easy to attack it. If you can't attack your opponent's leader effectively, then we can attack this Marco effectively.
Yeah, and actually, like you're mentioning it, I do enjoy that you're hyper-focusing on this King leader's ability, because it's going to be incredibly crucial to deal with this Marco spamming here. It's actually effective against both the Marcos here, because now the the Whitebeard leader is essentially a 5k through this Marco if the Whitebeard player wants to defend it a couple of times, and it's just much easier to take and pick apart cards out of his life. So
Absolutely.
quite efficient here. And even if the king player plays something like a -1 Dawn effect, he actually has Onigashima to turn it back on again. So I would like to see something like a 6-drop king here would be the perfect card. Get rid of the blocker and then be able to attack the tapped Marco a couple of times.
Absolutely. And, you know, it is going to be if you can put your opponent to 0 life this turn, they are going to be in an extremely negative spot because that if they choose to drop the 9-drop, then it's still not, they're still going to go down. They're going to be at 0. So it's going to be very easy to just put damage into that leader, you know?
I agree. Yeah, definitely a few priorities here. Attacking the Marco as many times as possible in an efficient manner, just to force out cards. And then also trying to get rid of this blocker and potentially putting, like you said, the Whitebeard player at 0. But this attack for 8 at the beginning with this king, I wonder if the Whitebeard player is going to use something like a Radical Beam or discard 2/2Ks to defend his card here, or if he just discards an event card from his hand to after it's died. So we'll see what he chooses to do.
And we do see in his drop area, we do see and they were just going to go Radical Beam out. Kind of the same as just using the Marco ability, right?
Exactly.
All right. And what are we playing here? We have, an ulti. Oh, is ulti going to play a page 1? All right.
Yes,
Don -1. Do we have, and we have vanilla page 1. That is going to be pretty good at pressuring your opponent next turn.
So typically very good against the aggressive decks to play 2, 5, and 6 bodies in play. But here it's going to be effective against Whitebeard also because it's going to tax this Marco if it goes sideways and attacks. And it's also going to put a little bit more pressure on the Whitebeard itself now that he's at 1. So I do want to see the 9-drop here if he has access to it. And if he doesn't, he might be in a really difficult position, like you mentioned before. So
yeah, 9-drop does feel correct, but it does if you go to 9-drop attack, that lets you block with Uta and rest your opponent's blocker as well. So Uta putting in a little bit of work here. One thing I think we're gonna see if this comes up as a small mistake. He did not use Onigashima to ramp back to 10, which means if he does a Dawn -2 this turn, he will not be at 10 to untap the next turn. Now, he obviously, I don't know what's in his hand, but basically, if let's say he blocks with Uta, uses its ability, and then use a Bolo Breath, or Blast Breath rather, then he would have 1 less untapped Dawn next turn. Now, he could just not do that. So I'm not sure what's in his hand, but
no, it definitely cuffs off a few. So even if he doesn't have something like a Blast Breath in his hand, the Whitebeard player could actually take that into account and say, okay, let me force out this Uta block and then have him Dawn -1. And now that he's done that, he doesn't actually have access to something like a Blast Breath in his hand. So definitely a small advantage, at least theoretical, for the Whitebeard player. Just using all your resources from the side of the purple player is important. So definitely could come up if something like that exists in his hand.
Yeah. Something like, Hell's Judgment, just very strong. Something like block into Hell's Judgment could pretty much take this entire board out. But we would just have to consider then we don't have the Dawn next turn. So here we're just going to go swing 6 into lead.
So 6 here, very easy to defend. I would actually wouldn't mind taking it either just to fluff up the hand a little bit. And he's actually taking advantage of the fact that he has Uta in play and he's using it as soon as possible to get rid of this Marco because he understands that he is the aggressor in the matchup and definitely in this game state right now. So I do like this block. However, this does force him to defend it, I would hope.
I feel like Hell's Judgment here would be incredibly powerful. It stops the incoming attack and then makes the Whitebeard leader just too small to really matter, right? Even if you buff it, even if you buff it back up to a 5K with your 9-drop, you just discard 1 card. So
agreed. So if we do see the Hell's Judgment, like you mentioned, not tapping the Onigashima might matter, and he actually lets die. I want to say if he has to overcommit to defend it, I would have wanted him to. Oh, and then we see the 9-drop here. So definitely losing the Uta there makes it so that he doesn't have an answer for Marco on the following turn after this one. So it could get a little dicey here.
Yeah.
We just don't know the context of his hand right now. Maybe he didn't have a way to overcommit for it. Or like you mentioned, maybe he didn't want to go Don minus and not have 10 next turn. It could be a number of different situations depending on his hand. But
right now, and one thing to notice, he can still get to 10 thanks to Onigashima, but they won't. He'll have one less active mode Don. You know what I mean? So he's put in this really tough spot here. If he wants to Blast Breath out, he's put in this spot by not using that Onigashima. He's really put in that, basically a negative spot here.
It's a little bit more awkward. Like we saw in the Zoro matchup earlier, every single Don matters when it comes to being the aggressor and frustrating the opponent. And there's a Blast Breath, like you mentioned before, that might actually be why he hesitated to use it earlier to save Uta, because then now he's calculating like, oh, it's going to be a little more awkward on my turn. Throwing his math off a little bit. So it will actually end up mattering, like a very, very heads up analysis from your side here. It's actually going to be really important, because even if he ends up using a Don minus effect this turn proactively, it also will affect him.
Yeah, it's basically like you have one awkward Don the rest of the game, But the good news is here, these Marcos are actually pretty small now. One of them is a 5K, one of them is a 6K. It's kind of hard to attack my opponent's 7K leader here, right? Good thing your battle cards are very small, and I can get the value that way. If I just go after the field here, I get value through killing your battle cards and making you discard cards to resurrect them.
Yeah, it's very good that now his leader is essentially either a 4K or a 5K, depending on how much he wants to protect these Marcos. And I do believe this Marco 4 is one of the more important cards on the table, if not the most important card on the table right now, because if the Whitebeard player loses it completely this turn, he will not have blocker defenses against these all-ins on the following turn. So I would definitely prioritize, getting rid of that Marco this turn and then see where we go from here.
Yeah, swinging 6 to 4. Whitebeard is known for having a lot of 2K, so really just taxing your opponent like crazy. If he wants to protect this, he's either going to have to discard some Whitebeard cards from his hand or use 2Ks plus to get out. So really taxing the hand here. All right. Yeah, so he looks. What did he attack there? He attacked, and then his opponent
ended up,
discarded one.
Assuming just reviving the Marco through its own effect.
Right. Of course.
And then, but still, like you mentioned before, this Marco is essentially going to take 3 cards from the Whitebeard's hand to defend, and then a destruction effect could also tag it as well. So we'll see what more. I actually feel like attacking 5s into the 4 is more or less the same thing, because he's just going to end up discarding 1 card. So I do. Yeah. If he doesn't have anything else to do with the Don, it's fine to attach it. But otherwise, you could play something like a bomb this turn. It would be more proactive. So
I agree. And what's kind of scary is one thing to consider is he did not protect Uta against a 6K swing. So not protecting Uta against a 6K might just mean he doesn't have a 2K in hand. I feel like keeping Uta alive would have been very good for him. Because then he can just rest the Marco again. So it is something to consider.
Yeah, so definitely resting the Marco both this turn and the following turn would have been an ideal strategy to try to close this game out, especially if the Whitebeard player doesn't have 2 9-drops. The second 9-drop might be, and here you go. He actually replaces it. And that's going to be critical for this game state, because now all the King player has to do is survive this turn and tap down that Marco. And if there's no second 9-drop from the Whitebeard's side of the table, he's actually in a very decent spot. So
absolutely. Only 3 cards in hand. Man, I feel like it might have been a good idea to take that damage last turn to get that Blast Breath. Now you have Blast Breath online to protect your current board, which is kind of, getting you closer to winning. Whitebeard's, unfortunately, you were able to get 3 cards out of Whitebeard's hand, but they were just kind of, honestly, they were like 3 bad cards, right? They really didn't do much there. So it's, you're not in this perfect position. If he slams another 9-drop, you're kind of in that same exact position of, well, now, like, how do I clear the board or win? And then the more 9-drops come down, it's like, well, this is just a lot of pressure every turn.
Yeah, he's going to So the only saving grace for the Whitebeard player using another 9-drop this turn would be that he gets to effectively, protect his 2 tapped character cards. I do see that being a little difficult with only 3 cards in hand. I would like to see the Whitebeard player actually play something like a second Marco after the first one is tapped, and then try to go for something like board control, destroying these page and ulti. So that would be the approach that I would take, because at this point, if the Whitebeard player survives the next turn cycle, he's very favored to win. So
Exactly, yeah. Now, one question you could ask is, do you just attack with the 4-drop Marco first? Your opponent's pretty much guaranteed to rest it, so do you just get an attack out of it?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting to do that, because at that point you'd have to attack with all your cards before playing something like a second Marco, and you would actually need to have the second one available in order to try to survive all ins. Definitely a blocker is very critical here. I definitely don't agree with not attacking at all. So certainly, if he's going to make any sort of attacks this turn, attacking with Marco first would be the right option. So.
All right, we're going to see an Ezo looking at the top 5, maybe just, trying to figure out what we want to do here.
Yeah, so going ahead and seeing 5 cards from the top of your deck first before, deciding into going into any play pattern, and he goes ahead and finds that second Marco. So now he might have a clear direction for how he wants to take this turn.
Yeah, we know how annoying Marco can be, basically changing the game from I'm going to win to I'm going to lose off the back of like one Marco can really, really do it,
Yeah, so now here he's priced in to swinging, and we already know that the Uta is very likely to not survive. Oh, here actually a very fantastic Otama from the side. Now what's going to end up happening is the large Whitebeard is going to be able to attack, ping the Uti before it gets to use its ability to rest the Marco, and now he doesn't actually have to play the second Marco if he doesn't want to. So a critical Otama.
Yeah, getting rid of that as well, getting rid of page 1, and this is where the second ulti I think would have come in a lot of handy. We are locked out of the 9-drop, so our opponent is going to be at 0 life. However, he's probably going to have 2 blockers, which is just going to be really difficult to get through.
Yeah, so
again,
here,
a Hell's Judgment here would be good. Again, stopping pretty much all of the aggression. We'll see if he has it.
Yeah, so something that you mentioned, playing that second blocker is very pivotal, because we know that purple excels at destroying cards that are 4 or less costed in a very Dawn efficient manner. So definitely important to have that second Marco here, just to not get all in some universe. So
all right, he could always just 10-drop, right? I mean, 10-drop Kaido is available to King, or is it locked to a Kaido only leader?
Yeah, so it's Animal Kingdom Pirate, and it's interesting because let's say he does go for something like a 10-drop or some mass removal effect, the Marcos would actually be available to come back, so it wouldn't be a definitive board clear, but it would definitely get rid of this 9-drop. So
yeah. All right, so we got double blocker. I don't know. I think a King is like it's so funny. You play Kaido, your opponent discards 3 cards and revives his entire board. It's like
so that's actually pretty funny, but it does tax the resources from the side of the Whitebeard player. So definitely a considerable option here, and at the same time, getting rid of the 9-drop is the most important thing that needs to happen. So it wouldn't be too terrible.
Yep. Yeah, losing the board is just so critical. Whitebeard looks like it has 1, 2, so like 6 cards in hand, right? Yes. Whitebeard having 6 cards, King only having 5. It's just, the board is going crazy. This is a very intimidating board to deal with.
Yeah, so definitely a 10-drop here would have been absolutely fantastic, as it would have taxed the hand, gotten rid of the key cards in the field. He's still at 2 life, so it's very reasonable to assume that you could survive 4 attacks depending on the resources that are in your life plus your hand. So a lot of factors. Obviously, he doesn't have it here as he's attaching 1 Dawn, but it would have been quite nice.
Yeah, and it can also just prevent you from losing as well, because your opponent is definitely kind of presenting lethal here. Maybe so we're really going to want to see something that can deal with multiple threats at the same time.
Yeah, so something like some sort of tempo creature plus a removal I mean, he has to definitely deal with some amount of the pressure on the board right now. So and we
Oh,
see a
Jailer
blocker here.
Beast
So the opponent,
playing.
yeah. So the purple player is actually playing some sort of a hybrid strategy where he plays a lot of like free play vanillas, and I can see why something like that would be powerful going into a room full of aggro.
Yep, playing the blocker Jailer Beast, and then Baccarat. His name is Baccarat, right? The 3/5. That's a film card. So I'm some type of hybrid impel down animal pirate film deck that we're seeing here. Very interesting, very unique deck building, but Whitebeard is Whitebeard, so it's doing pretty good against it.
And like we said before, I would have liked to see something like Kings and Kaidos come down instead of these, vanilla type. These aggressive type of cards are good in their like specific matchups, but when it comes to dealing with Whitebeard's board, we need something more like removal. So unfortunate that the King player did not have the right tools, at least from what we've seen here for the matchup specifically. But he's definitely been putting up a fight here. And the Weber player is at 0 life due to the early game aggression from the King side. So we're going to see if he can sneak in, first of all, surviving this turn and then sneaking in a win on the following turn. But it's going to be difficult against another Otama.
Absolutely. And then, here we're going to have another Automata just to clear the blocker with the Whitebeard effect. That is going to be pretty detrimental here.
So considering a trigger, maybe we'll see if the King player actually has something he wants to do. This could be something like a Hell's Judgment too. So definitely keeping it would stutter a lot of the aggression. And with only 5 cards in hand from the Whitebeard side, I could see a world where if these blockers actually attack and he tries to go for something like a lethal with the Marcos, he could end up throwing the game. So that's definitely, we'll see if he wants to play it slow. He has full control of the field, so taking it slow would not be the worst thing.
Yeah, I don't think you want to attack with the Marcos, right? That, like you said, it feels like a throw. So that's pretty tough.
Just as a Whitebeard player, take your time. Use your resources to their full effect. You don't need to rush the game. Just understand that you are still the controlling player in this situation. And then if the game has to take another extra turn to guarantee the victory, just let it happen that way.
No, absolutely. I agree. And here, we're just considering what Don we want to attack with. Our opponent might have something like Thunder Bagawa and Hell's Judgment or even Blast Breath, so we just want to make the correct attacks to play around all of those cards while also leaving up a fair bit of defense here.
Yeah, so leaving up some Don for the defensive options. Another Last Breath, like you mentioned before, being purple's essentially Radical Beam option. And
having to over counter there.
Yeah, so definitely unideal to over counter, but he does want to keep that last life. And essentially, the purple player is hoping for potentially a mistake from the side of the Whitebeard player. But as long as he just goes 7 with the Whitebeard, if depending on the context of his hand, if he wants to go 7 with the other Marco and then leave 1 Marco up, it wouldn't be the most defensive play, but it could also be a warranted action. It just depends on how much defense the Whitebeard player actually has in hand. But either way, as long as he leaves everything untapped this turn, there's probably no way to lose. So,
yep, very true. I don't know. It just feels like you're being very careful, but at the same time, it's like you have double blocker. I'm assuming based on the way he's kind of like being careful, he just has like no counter power. So he's probably considering like, do I just lose to kill one of my Marcos attack? Like that's what I'm assuming he's thinking.
Yeah, so we don't know the context of his hand, so it might actually be a very weak hand from his perspective. And he's telling himself, oh, if I don't end the game this turn, it might actually get a little dicey. So definitely something to consider there. All the Dawn on the Whitebeard side indicates that he's probably going to go pass for the turn. We'll actually end up seeing it, if he reveals his hand at the end of the game, if it's actually weak or strong, but definitely something to consider, just being overly safe is what he should do, and I agree with this play.
No, exactly. And I mean, really, what's a card that King can draw here? Like a 9-drop King, 9-drop Kaido is not really it because you just block it, and then the leader and the Baccarat can't really attack. Like, it's just kind of one of those things. It's like, well, I mean, you
Yeah,
know.
so here, if he goes for something like the 9-drop and kills one blocker and forces the other blocker out, the a Whitebeard player would have to have actual 0 counter power in
Right,
his
yeah.
5-card hand, and I doubt that that is the case at the moment right now, leaving one down open.
Yeah.
So
I do think he has low counter power based on the way he was kind of considering his plays. You know, he could just be like very what's the word?
maybe he has a 1K
Precise.
and a 2K or something like that.
Yeah, he could just be very precise, but I would think that he has, you know, some amount of counter power.
Yeah, his
Right.
mannerisms do indicate that he might have low counter power in hand. He could just
Yeah.
have ample counter power in hand, and he's doing the mind tricks a little bit. Either way,
Yeah, he's just a very deliberate, considerate player. And okay, we're gonna get rid of it. He did, like, the thing is he played to Otama as well. So like that's something to consider as well. He playing to Otama eliminates 2 2Ks out of your hand as well.
yeah, it's very true.
Oh, okay.
We see here a removal.
Yeah.
So, like we mentioned before, leaving both the Marcos up, just playing around the random removal that he could have in his hand, bringing it back, discarding a no combo power, and we now see that there's only 3 cards left. So this is most certainly a situation to play the other
Yeah.
Radical Beam, and then here there's no lethal options left for the King player.
Yeah.
So,
And we're just gonna scoop it up. Yeah, there you go. King, you put up a valiant effort. I feel like you needed better board presence, right?